Welcome to The Breadwinners, the podcast where we talk about what it actually takes to lead and earn when the world keeps shifting under your feet. I'm Rachael Lowell. For nearly 20 years, I've been coaching leaders at top-tier institutions and Fortune 500 through massive change. But what's happening now is different. The pace, the pressure, the way it's hitting people's work and their lives. We keep calling it burnout, but most of what I'm seeing isn't exhaustion. It's what some are now calling quiet cracking. Too many threads, too many unknowns, too little trust, too little uncertainty. There's no safe path anymore. And the safe path was never safe for everyone anyway. Ashwini Anburajan knows that well. She's the CEO of Obi, the kayak for rideshare. But before that, she was a journalist at NBC, went to business school, landed at venture-backed startup BuzzFeed, and then in-house at Amazon. Ashwini was a venture investor and an angel investor, and always remembers watching her immigrant parents as they struggled to build a good life. This conversation made me question something. Is risk tolerance a limited commodity? Do families only have a certain amount? Do companies? Do CEOs? I love talking to Ashwini about all this and more. Let's dive in. Welcome to The Breadwinners. We are so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Rachael.
Fantastic. Let's dive in. So your career has spanned journalism, venture, and tech. Those are all systems where access and power are shifting right now. I'd love to talk to you about what shaped you, what you've learned inside these worlds, and how you think they need to evolve. But let's start with your early story. What shaped your relationship with work, money, and responsibility?
Sure. I'm an immigrant to the United States. I came here when I was 4. My father was quite poor, and he was very determined to get to the U.S. from India. And so for us, and for me in particular, I really saw my parents struggle when they first came and then build a good life. And I think that core tenets that were drilled into me were financial responsibility, hard work, and doing everything you can to kind of advance yourself and make yourself better. I think it makes you a little bit of a perfectionist when you have that. I'm like many immigrants in that sense, but I really understood where I came from and what we were trying to achieve. And I have a lot of gratitude for my family in being able to sacrifice a lot to give me the opportunities that I had.
Yeah, it sounds like they took a really big risk coming to the country. How do you think that risk part shaped who you became professionally?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I think my parents' risk, my father, when I talk about poverty, I'm talking no running water, that level of poverty.
Wow.
And so his own journey was quite remarkable to get to the U.S. because people at that time, it was much harder to come unless you came from a wealthy Indian family to begin with. So to come as a professional and build a career here was a big deal. I think, though, that was his risk, right? It was really coming here and building a life. And I think he expended all his energy in doing that. When you have a stronger base of financial stability, or at least a family to fall back on, which he did not have, it allows you then to take career risks. It allows you to start businesses. It allows you to quit and go do something else. There's a level of financial risk-taking that's associated with that I think people from a first generation might have had a harder time doing. And so for me, I grew up with the idea that you need to have a steady income, you need to be really stable, you need to just build, and follow trusted and true paths. And I think compared to the rest of my family, I've been an entrepreneur, I went into venture, I've worked in crypto. I've done things that seem like that were not part of my upbringing in any way, shape, or form. It was much more about have a really good job at a really big corporate company that can set you up for life. But we know that the economic situation has changed significantly from that. And for me, that's where that risk-taking came. And then, you brought up the journalism. I also had just strong interests, right? I wanted to be a writer. I felt more creative than most people. I think I've channeled a lot of that creativity into business overall.
Yeah.
I tried things that otherwise weren't typical at least for my family background.
Sure. When you left reporting to build companies, did that feel like you were taking that step off the track? And I'm just curious, what was the story about yourself or about what success could look like that you were trying to uncover that's a big switch from journalism to building companies?
Yeah, of course. So I left journalism because I think I hit a glass wall, glass ceiling at NBC. I was covering politics, covered Barack Obama, didn't like the fact that I really wasn't getting on air, and though I had good stories. And so, I had a long talk, in particular with my father. I remember taking a walk with him, and he was just like, I really think you should go to business school. So it was meant to be the safe route.
Oh, interesting.
So which was really interesting. But then I ended up in business school because I got a full scholarship to go to the UK, to go to Cambridge University. And if you go to school in Europe, yes, they're teaching you MBA and skills, and they have entrepreneurship centers. It's a much more conservative culture, right? So the idea of hiring someone that was switching from journalism to business was just not happening in Europe. And so I ended up coming back to the US, and I managed to get my first job at a small private equity-backed digital media out-of-home company doing really financial modeling and business development. And that started my path into venture and startups. And then I went to BuzzFeed, which was actually really classic venture-backed startup in the early 2010s. And that allowed me then to kind of get that entrepreneurial bug to then go out on my own. But the irony of sometimes in life you take what it's supposedly the safe route, but the safe route is not presenting itself in the way that it should be, right? Like I just didn't get a job at some big corporate at the time that would have allowed me then to follow the path that my parents had thought was the right thing to do. Right. And what it then did was, develop a whole nother set of skills, kind of whet your appetite for doing something different, allowed me to pursue entrepreneurship.
Yeah. It's really interesting to me that biz dev was such a big part of your transition, just because that it takes some of that kind of reporter moxie and the ability to kind of go out there and take risks, I think, kind of all the time. What was the moment for you at any point in your career where you felt like the model that you were following at work, right? Maybe it was your parents' model for stability that you were talking about kind of broke. When did you realize that the model you were following at work or in leadership wasn't working for you anymore?
Yes. I read Lean In.
Oh, wow.
In 2013. And I read that book and I said, this is for the good girls. This is for the girls that were sort of class president, popular, pretty, and smart, that were mainstream, mostly white, and followed a very conventional path and were deeply supported by their families and their parents, both financially, but through kind of the network of resources that they could be given.
Yeah.
I did not think that book applied to me in any way, shape, or form, though on the surface it might have seemed like it did. I did not match that personality type.
Yeah.
And what struck me about it was, this isn't working for me, right? Work is hard. And work requires, especially at that time, being in an office with a lot of people and working through your own personality quirks in the context of working with others.
Right.
And a lot of entrepreneurs are pretty difficult to manage as people. And I just knew that this wasn't working. And so that was also a bit of, I haven't talked about this a lot publicly, but it was part of my motivation to go out and be an entrepreneur. I just didn't want to have a boss anymore. But the reality is I'm the CEO of a company now. I have a board. You always have people you have to answer to, whether it's your clients, whether it's your employees, whatever that is. And that is something that I've matured into, definitely. But initially, that was also the idea that the conventional stories of what female leadership in particular and success in business looks like, I just did not feel like it fit me. I didn't relate to most of the people I saw out there. And for me, that meant sometimes you just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And start to shape it for yourself. And that will require more failure along the way. But the reward, I think, is deeper as well.
Absolutely. Did you feel as you went along your path? I mean, I agree with you. I think a lot of entrepreneurs really struggle with authority and like to work for themselves. But were there things that you needed to unlearn as you moved through these different systems?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I think I've learned from work is that it's your work quality, right? And what you do and the initiative you take and the vision that you have And then it's also your ability to be supported and mentored or be given a chance by the leadership around you. Those two things have to come together. If you cannot have one without the other.
Right.
And I think that those are the two key ingredients for success. I mean, I think for a long time I equated work with school. I mouthed off to the principal. I was like valedictorian in my class and like couldn't get along with the principal of the high school. Like, you know what I mean?
What did she say? Can you tell us a little bit?
Oh my God, he was the worst. Let me tell this story. This man, I had worked really hard. I got called in and I was told, I'll be speaking at graduation. He said, you just barely made it. It was so competitive. And I said to him, and I was 17, 18, I think at the time. I think maybe I was 18 at that point. And I looked at him and I said, I think that's not appropriate for you to tell me. I worked really hard and I am in the spot that I have. And it's irrelevant how close other people were to that. And he was like, you have a real chip on your shoulder, young lady. And I remember being so hurt.
Yeah.
I felt slapped, like verbally, right? And I was like, I'm such a bad person because I have a chip on my shoulder. But I also couldn't control what I was saying back.
Yeah.
And I told that story to some college friends, actually, and they were like, why would you talk back to him like that? And I was like, well, this is why we don't agree on certain things in the way we operate it in the world,
I know. I'm an entrepreneur too, and maybe I'm thinking about my 16-year-old. Like, if it came to that, I would stand behind what you said. I feel like, that there was a sort of hard edge that he was taking that just wasn't necessary in that conversation.
Yeah, I think it was just my personality. And I've learned to adapt it, soften it. Not soften it because you have to soften it, because like you also want people to like you and respect you, because you get farther in life if you're likable. That's just a fact, right?
Sure.
And I think the thing was that you had to learn that work isn't just like school. It's not about getting an A.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that was a really hard thing for me.
Yeah.
Like, right, it's not enough.
Sure. No. So when you think about, it sounds like earlier in your career, as you were finishing up school, getting the A was sort of your vision of what success looked like, that somehow in the work and life world, you would get the A and it would work that way. How do you define success differently now that you've had this lifetime experience?
I think success is about two things now. I think it's about the vision that you have for yourself and your ability to carry it through, especially if you're running a company or the vision for the company, articulating it, putting it on paper, executing on it, identifying risks and failure if you have it. I think the second thing is your personal network, your relationships with people, and being able to really grow that in a way that it supports that success.
Wow. Yeah.
And I would never have known that, right? Like, I think that's something you learn over time. Some people are taught it or just do it naturally. Yeah. It never came naturally to me. So it's something that I've really cultivated and built over the years.
Yeah. And now you are the CEO of a company called Obi. So congratulations. That is incredible. So I want to hear about how those lessons are coming into your new leadership role. Tell us about the company. What does Obi do?
Obi is the kayak for rideshare. You can download the consumer app, sync your accounts across different rideshare companies, and you can see the prices for any ride at any time in 175 different countries across rideshare like Uber, Lyft, black cars, and taxis. So it's a great way to save money and save time. It's very popular with consumers. Company's been around for 5 years or so. And I became CEO this past August of 2025.
Unbelievable. What drew you to Obi? And then I want to hear about the transition to CEO.
Yeah. What drew me to Obi was, to be very frank, and I know the economy with what's going on right now, I was laid off. My father had passed away. And I was working at a startup. I was head of BD. And it was a unicorn, right? So it checked a lot of boxes. But it just wasn't sinking. Like it wasn't working. I wasn't excited about it anymore. My dad had passed. An opportunity came up to go work at Amazon. And it seemed like the right time to go be in a big corporate environment and experience that. And then they did layoffs within less than 6 months. So, you go take a safe step, which is what I was saying before. Sometimes you think it's a safe path, but that safe path then has its own hurdles in it. And then you're laid off. You leave a job to go do this. And then suddenly you're laid off. And so I took some time off, actually. And when I was looking for the next thing, I realized that it was time to be in a leadership role. So Obi came up as an opportunity to be chief revenue officer initially. I've had a lot of experience bringing data to market, especially for consumer companies that are collecting a lot of data and monetizing it. And it was an opportunity to work directly with the board, to really be part of a leadership team. And so that was the motivation in terms of stepping in. There was a small company, and we're still quite small, but we've become pretty successful in what we do. And then it was just kind of a relentless execution for a year and a half. And then the opportunity to be CEO came up earlier this year. So.
Can you tell us a little bit about that transition? What's it been like for you?
Yeah, I felt like I was already doing the job in a lot of ways. A lot of the company was reporting to me. I was already setting the strategy. I've been challenged by some of the board members to really put a vision down for where the company could go. And I realized, if I'm not going to put something on paper, it's an unassigned task, right? It's like an idea that someone puts forward. But if you don't take that initiative to really put it on paper, write it out, and put it in front of people like, hey, these are my ideas, you'll never get anywhere. And so, like, literally, I sat down, and it was the one thing I learned at Amazon was how to write a memo. I sat down and wrote like Amazon style, like 8-page memo on where I believed the future of the company was. And I shared it with my team, with the board, with the founder and CEO at the time. And it was really well received. And it's pretty natural sometimes when you're the one that creates the vision, that you're going to be the one then tasked with executing on it. And I'd already kind of proven myself to the team overall. And, it's ironic to be CEO because you actually have more bosses because you have a board.
Right. Right. You were saying that, and I absolutely.
But that was how it happened. And then I was offered the role in the summer, and I stepped in August.
Wonderful. Tell us, what do you enjoy most about leading as a CEO?
Our team is largely based in Europe, and a lot of them are in town this week in New York. And I really enjoyed working with them at this level. We were sitting in a brainstorm meeting about this new product idea that we had a few days ago. And I said, wow, this is making me really happy. Sitting there and like puzzling through the problem, trying to figure it out. How do you execute on it? How do you go to market? How do you build a business model? It's the collaboration with everyone that I've really enjoyed. I'm not enjoying some of the administrative focus of some of the tasks. We're hiring, of course, so that's a big part of it. So we need to hire more so I can take some things off my plate. But the kind of high level work with the team and being aligned in what we're building and being excited to build it together, that's exciting.
Do you feel like what you're seeing is different in the CEO role than you saw in the chief revenue officer role? Tell me what you think has changed with the team since you've taken the CEO role.
Everything's changed. I didn't really expect that much of a shift. It's been a complete strategic step up. I think people see me as having the final say and calling the shots in a way that just really wasn't the case before. And though I was a very important decision maker at the company, I'm very clear with the team, like, CEOs don't often last long at companies, but hopefully this will be a long tenure. But, it's just we're here to grow. I'm evaluated purely on growth. Yes, as chief revenue officer, but far more so in this way. And then the aspects of growth are different, right? You're thinking about the financials of the company as much as you're thinking about just pure revenue growth. You're thinking about what gets built next. You're thinking about how do you build for a team? How do you think about long-term strategy for acquisition or an exit? There's just many more thought patterns and processes that are happening in your mind. And then the world reacts to you really differently. And I've been surprised by the external feedback. I've been surprised by the press that we've gotten. I've been surprised by the response around that as well.
What do you feel has been the most surprising about the public attention and response that you've gotten?
I didn't think I would get congratulated. I didn't think it was, to me, maybe because it felt like I was already halfway into the role and then I really stepped into it, that you don't realize it feels like a big deal to the outside world in some ways. Yeah, it's been surprising. A lot more doors have opened when I want to have conversations with this title versus the chief revenue officer title, especially because we're a smaller company, right?
Right.
Small company that's growing, but it is, so that's been different.
Amazing. over the past few months, what do you think you've learned? One thing that you've learned since you took the role? I mean, I'm sure there's 1,000, but what's one thing?
It's a great question. I feel like I've learned a lot, but the biggest thing I've learned is to stick to your commitment to what you want to build in the future or what you're building right now, right? And it's really the idea that you're constantly reiterating with your leadership team that this is actually where we're going to go. This is the outcome. This is the goal. And being able to kind of be the conductor that keeps everyone there. I'm learning more and more it's not about just me executing on the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day operations. It's actually and also taking the hands off the rail a little bit, because I can be a little perfectionist in the way that I need things done. So kind of letting people do their thing, stepping back, being more in a feedback loop where you're giving feedback a lot more. That's been really something I've learned. So it's definitely, I've learned a lot.
It's so exciting to hear and to think about your whole trajectory, right? Where you started and where you are now. And I can't wait to see where you're going to go with Obi. This is the Breadwinners. So we talk about breadwinning and we talk about how it's a both and, right? With, not just leading a company, leading our lives, combining everything together. We navigate what's risky and what feels stable, care and ambition, independence, interdependence. How do you see the both and in your life now as a CEO?
There's a lot of both and at the moment, right? I mean, I'm a breadwinner in the sense of, as CEO, you're thinking about your own personal compensation, right? And your own personal income and exit and equity and all of it. But you have shareholders, you have employees, and that really changes the mindset. I mean, you're building so other people can have good lives and take care of their families. And you're building so that the shareholders can receive an exit from this company that they've invested a lot of money in. So all those things come together, and I feel like this is a weird thing to say, but I feel like an adult and a grown up in a way that I don't think I felt like a good, not in the same way. It's easy to, if you live in New York City in particular, it's easy to feel forever young. And I think that I feel a sense of gravitas.
Do you think that relates? I hadn't really thought about that piece that you articulated so well, right? That you're thinking about yourself and your own growth, but you're also thinking about how to sustain a whole ecosystem of people. And you think that is the piece that makes you feel more adult, or it's some combination?
Yeah, I think it's the combination of the two.
Interesting. Fascinating.
My mindset is much more financial these days since becoming CEO. I think just constantly thinking about numbers.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You're at that phase. Let's talk about, we're going to dive into the part of the conversation that we call the carbo load, where we ask some quick fire questions. And the few for you now, I can't wait to hear your answer to this first one. So one of the things we ask all of our guests is, what is always going to be human about how we work?
How we work is about how you get along with other people and connect to other people, because you have to collaborate. And so that sense of collaboration, cooperation, conscientiousness that you bring to work and to your colleagues and to your teams, that's always going to be there.
I think people think that they can kind of AI their way through some of those interpersonal interactions, and definitely isn't the case. Tell us about, I know you go to so many exciting work events. What was the last great work event you attended?
The last great work event I attended was a dinner organized by a group called Curbivore, which is a conference at the Move America Summit. Move America is the biggest mobility conference globally, and they have a huge conference in the United States every year. And I had the lucky chance of sitting with two highly respected investors. I won't say who they are, but I feel like I got a master class in autonomous vehicles, the industry overall, what was moving. And for whatever reason, just the three of us ended up sitting and talking for a very long time. And I felt very lucky in that moment to be in that room and around that. And these are things you just can't learn on the internet. Great, you can educate yourself to a degree, but to really understand the ins and outs of how an industry might be shaping itself up in the future, that felt like a gift.
I can see that. And I can imagine that just having the space at an event like that to be able to get that kind of deep dive sounds phenomenal. Okay. Last question. Who's a breadwinner that you'd like to break bread with? Someone you'd want to learn from, you'd like to grill how they work or pitch something past?
I'm a huge admirer of some of the female CEOs of big corporates. So Mary Barra, like a GM, I think would be an amazing person to meet and talk to. And just, especially like mobility in this industry is so male. It's male dominated. I mean, tremendously so. Maybe not so much on the policy side on the government side of things, and yet it impacts our lives, especially as women, right? Like we're on the move, our safety, all of those things together. So I think that would be someone I'd be really interested in talking to. And it's a very iconic company as well. So it's a big deal to step into that role. The other person I'd really like to break bread with is Dara from Uber. And I would pitch him to come and work with Obi.
Heard it here first. Got it. I love that. Oh, Ashwini, this was such a delight to talk to you and hear about everything that you've built and everything that you're building. Where should we go to find out more about Obi?
Please download the consumer app. It's in the App Store, Google Play, or the iPhone Apple Store, and give it a try if you need a rideshare. It's a great app. It really will save you money. As someone myself who's taken a lot of rideshare in my own life. So yeah, we're grateful for your ridership.
Fantastic. I'm going to download Obi. So excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
This has been the Breadwinners Podcast. I'm your host, Rachael Lowell. The show is produced by Rachael Lowell and Rachael Sklar. Technical production by Ron Passaro. Music by Hannah Baki. With gratitude for support from Ruth Ann Harnisch. The Breadwinners was founded in 2019 by me and Jennifer Owens. The Breadwinners is a co-production between Smart Friends Network and Reworking Leadership. Thanks for listening.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.